Welcome to this explainer. Look, today we're bypassing all the usual noise about exam stress and jumping straight into the actual mechanics of high achievement. We are looking at VCE English Section B text creation, but definitely not as some abstract, purely creative free-for-all. Instead, we're treating it as an actionable architectural blueprint. Because honestly, top-tier students don't just sit around and hope for inspiration to strike, right? They engineer their texts from the ground up using really specific, repeatable strategies highlighted by the Victorian Curriculum and Assessment Authority. So, let's break down exactly how they do it.
Okay, let's dive into this. The absolute foundation of your text's engineering is the fixed title. Assessors repeatedly note that the title provided in the exam isn't just a suggestion, and it absolutely isn't just a label you slap at the top of the page. It is a central conceptual parameter. When you pick a title, you're literally selecting the exact boundaries of your text. Top-tier students use this title to strategically dictate the entire flow, focus, and development of their ideas, tightly aligning it with their chosen framework of ideas.
To see how this actually works in practice, let's look at how different students approach the exact same title. Take the title Origins from the Writing About Country framework. Now, a lower scoring response might just take a literal interpretation, simply writing a narrative about moving from one geographical starting place to another. But a top-tier strategy, that uses the title as a conceptual lens. Instead of just geography, they use Origins to explore, say, the roots of family trauma and the process of healing on a rural farm, maybe using a symbol like a cracked mirror to reflect a scarred landscape. It's the exact same title, but that conceptual approach unlocks a way deeper thematic complexity.
Section 1, Strategic Sequencing and Growth.
Right, so once you have your foundational title, you need to erect the frame of the building. A major trap that assessors call out all the time is relying on a rambling external plot. Instead, your structure really needs to focus on internal character shifts and the careful substantiation of ideas to show genuine growth or shift in perspective. And this progression brilliantly illustrates that exact transformation, drawn straight from a high-scoring exemplar responding to the title Changing Direction in the Personal Journeys framework. The student didn't just write about a physical journey. They sequenced an internal shift. Step 1, the character begins as a ruthless weapon, a soldier dealing with war trauma. Step 2, they engage in the act of folding paper cranes, which is this stumbling journey toward redemption. And then step 3, they finally arrive at a sense of shared humanity and atonement. The sequencing itself builds the growth, moving the character all the way from rage or trauma right to acceptance.
Section 2, Structural Cohesion Using Motifs. So the exam provides stimulus materials. And honestly, lower-scoring students often just reference an image or a quote once, tick the box, and completely forget about it. But high-scoring students, they utilize the exam stimulus continuously as structural glue. Take in actual stimulus text focusing on being surrounded by a vastness and each grain of sand. High-scoring responses take specific phrases like vastness or grains of sand and weave them as recurring motifs throughout their entire piece. They aren't just using the quote, they adopt the imagery entirely. So they might describe a character feeling overwhelmed by the vastness of an adult world, or maybe the slipping away of childhood like grains of sand.
By treating the stimulus imagery as a motif, you're effectively turning abstract creativity into a repeatable, high-scoring science. Think of it as a motif masterclass. First off, it completely binds complex ideas together from the very start of your piece to the finish. Second, it replaces the need for those rambling, complicated plots with tight, highly meaningful symbolism. And third, it embeds the stimulus deeply into the framework. That proves to the assessor that you haven't just memorized a pre-prepared story, but you've actively engineered a response to the exact materials sitting right in front of you.
Section 3, Establishing Strategic Authorial Voice.
Okay, with the frame and glue in place, it's time to give the blueprint a soul. A voice in your writing shouldn't just happen by accident based on whatever mood you're in that day. It absolutely must serve a deliberate, strategic purpose that connects with your reader. According to the VCE study design, your text has to establish a voice to achieve one or more of these 4 official purposes: to explain, to express, to reflect, or to argue. Whether you're adopting the confiding, honest voice of someone reflecting on their childhood, or maybe the commanding, authoritative voice of an activist arguing a case, every single structural and linguistic choice you make has to actively work to achieve that designated purpose. So, the crucial point here is understanding exactly who you are establishing that voice for. The assessor reports highlight a pretty stark contrast. A limiting strategy is writing for self, and this often results in cloying sentiment, overly diary like entries, or sensationalized content that just loses sight of the actual task. The top tier strategy is writing for the reader, and more specifically, remembering your secondary audience, the adult assessor. Let's be real, they're probably reading your piece at 10 p.m. with a lukewarm cup of coffee. So even if you're writing a piece intended for a teenage audience, you still must construct it with the sophistication expected by the adult who is ultimately grading it.
Section 4. Mastering Linguistic Amplification.
This brings us to the final polish of our blueprint. You've got the structure, the motifs, and the voice. Now, how do you use precise vocabulary to make it all sing? Well, this quote directly from the VCE English Assessor Report is your guiding principle, using linguistic strategies to amplify and develop ideas. Notice it doesn't say using big words to sound smart. Vocabulary is a tool. It's the literal mechanism you use to map complex conceptual ideas onto your chosen structure. If you're exploring the tension of dual identity, your vocabulary choices must amplify that tension. It's all about precision and purposeful language that develops your framework's core ideas.
And a huge part of that precision is actually knowing when to hold back. You have to trust the adult assessor to infer deeper meaning. Lower scoring responses often suffer from this urge to over-explain every single detail to the reader. High scoring responses, on the other hand, use crisply presented dialogue, carefully chosen metaphors, and implied meanings. If your character is angry, you really don't need to write, "He was very angry." You show it. You show it through the sharp, clipped nature of their dialogue or the aggressive way they interact with their environment. You just have to trust the blueprint you've built.
So we've covered the fixed title as a conceptual parameter, strategic sequencing for real growth, using stimulus motifs for cohesion, establishing a purposeful voice, and mastering linguistic amplification. This right here is the architecture of top-tier writing. It requires planning, precision, and a deep understanding of your audience. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative challenge. The next time you sit down with a practice prompt, will you just start writing and hope for the best? Or how will you blueprint your next text? Thank you for checking out this explainer. Now get out there and start building.